Kakadosh Boker or Beki'im Bahalacha 6, day 63, Siman Kuf Samech 160, page 155. Yeah, 155. Hamsa. Yeah, fine. Halacha Lamed Vav. Okay, we're talking about how much water is required for Netilat Yadayim. So, Chachamenu, they instituted that to perform the mitzvah of Netilat Yadayim, one must have a container filled with at least a revi'it of water. Okay, so one more time, you want to do Netilat Yadayim, you need a revi'it, right? So we already spoke about what is a revi'it, right? If you look in 106, the Nachalat Tzvi, and the Eliyah Rabbah actually explained that our sages required revi'it of water since that is the amount of rainwater can be considered a kosher mikveh to purify small utensils such as pins and needles. And this is the Lachal Moshe Sinai, but Chachamenu later instituted a stringency requiring 40 se'ah for utensils as well. Using a container holding a revi'it of water purifies one's hands, right, in the small mikveh, which is the ability to purify that which is tameh. So basically you have, right, small utensils that once upon a time you would be able to put a pen, a needle inside of a mikveh, inside of a small revi'it, and it was kosher. Nowadays, you need 40 se'ah. That's why when you go to a tevilat kelim nowadays, right, it's a big thing. And that's 40 se'ah. You understand why? Because that's what you need, right? Nowadays, Chachamenu were the ones that instituted that. Okay, but whether one pours the water into both hands at once or one after the other, all that is needed is a revi'it of water. So all you need is a revi'it. If more water is available, however, it's commendable to use plenty of water, as was explained above in 158.20. You remember we spoke about whether it's going to be sigula for parnasah or that it's good to wash in abundance, right, of water. So therefore, even though again mikaradin you have a revi'it that's already going to be enough, so 86, which is nothing. Remember, revi'it is 3 ounces, right? If you take a regular 10-ounce cup or 9-ounce cup of a drinking cup, the white ones of Costco, they're 10 ounces. So if you got 10 ounces, a third of that cup is already more than a revi'it. So it's mamash nothing. It's what is that? You understand? That's for Netilat Yadayim. But again, obviously, if you have an abundance, it's better to use an abundance. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. If you and you don't have a lot, 100%. You're right. Yeah, you've got a picnic, you don't have a lot, you could have it there. Okay. Halacha Lamed Zayin, 37. Yeah, you have it over there. Yeah. I didn't send it out yet on the chat. Yeah?
No, it's on the chat.
No, I didn't send it yet. Yeah. In one container. Yeah. We turned the page, by the way. Lead by example. Yeah. It is necessary for this revi'it water, right, to be held in a single container. One may not fill up a container with half a revi'it, pour it on his hands, and then fill it up with another half a revi'it, right? Meaning you can't do half-halves. It has to be one full revi'it inside of a container, right? You know, I'm going to take a small little tiny shot glass of 1 ounce. I'll fill it up to the top, pour a little bit, fill it up again, pour again, pour again. I'm going to say what? It's got it has a revi'it at the end. No, but it's only 1 ounce. Or even a 2-ounce glass. It doesn't help. You need a revi'it in one shot in the cup. Now later, if you're going to do it half, that's something else. But at least at the beginning, when I'm going to do the Netilat Yadayim, I need a revi'it in one shot in this cup. Okay? If someone has 2 containers, each of them holding half a revi'it, he cannot perform the mitzvah by pouring of the water by simultaneously. Even if the water is combined mid-air, right? If he does this, his hands still remain unfit, right? Before pouring the water on them. So it doesn't matter, right? That means, again, you need a revi'it. Very, very important. By the way, the same halacha applies to kiddush. You know, some people, they come, they take a shot glass, right? And they do kiddush on a shot glass. It doesn't help, right? You need a revi'it. So if you want to do kiddush, you need to have a revi'it. So a shot glass of the 1 ounces, or even the 2 ounces, is not 3 ounces. It's 2.9. I think it's 2.9 something. It's 3 shots. Yeah, 3. Yeah, but it doesn't help because you need everything in one shot. Meaning everything in one shot glass. Not everything in one shot, but everything in one shot glass. You understand? So therefore, whether it's going to be for kiddush or whether it's going to be for netilat yadayim, you always have to make sure you have a proper utensil. Which one?
All netilat yadayim, or we're talking about specifically netilat yadayim?
Netilat yadayim for Suda. Yeah, also for the morning, the same thing. 100%.
Same thing?
Yeah. Revi'it also. That's why if you paid attention, the cup of netilat yadayim in Elal that they installed in the washrooms, right? It's not a small little tiny, right? It's not big, but it's exactly a revi'it. Meaning you're going to have 86 cc. You're going to have 3 ounces there in that cup. It's not a big cup. It's not one of those natlans. It's not a big. but it has to have a revi'it. Because if it doesn't have a revi'it, it's like you didn't have anything there.
So the cup is a revi'it. So you fill it up. This is one. Fill it up again.
Either you could do one, yeah, or you could do actually revi'it on the full hand, and it's fine.
You don't have to do it 3 times.
According again, there's halacha, then there's kabbalah, and then if the hands dirty.
PSO.
PSO, they always need 3 and 3, always.
So you would have. So if you're taking,
yeah,
you would have to fill up
3 times, 6 times, 3 and 3, yeah. Okay, fine. Next, 38.
I bought one in Israel, huge like this.
Oh, blindera.
So I don't know.
Okay, kol hakavod. Yeah.
Problem.
I hope you don't use it as your kiddush cup. I hope you don't use it as your kiddush cup on the night of Pesach. Yeah, fine. Halacha 38, page 156. Yeah. Halacha 38. If there's less than a revi'it of water in the container and someone poured it on his hands, he refilled the container and poured it on the hand a second time. His hand has not been purified, even though the combined waters is revi'it or more. Right? Again, the same halacha. Meaning, I don't care what's going to happen afterwards, that I'm going to come and I'm going to take a little tiny one shot glass and I'm going to pour and pour and pour and pour and pour and pour and pour. It doesn't matter. Right? Why doesn't it matter? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be Yitzei Chovah. Yeah? He cannot simply just pick up the container of the revi'it of water this time and pour it on his hand. He must first dry his hands from the water he poured on them before, and then he could pour from the container holding the revi'it of water to fill the mitzvah. The Ben Ish Chai, he wrote that it is common for someone to pick up the container holding less than a revi'it, right, of water, realizing it only after he has spilled it on his hands. And if this happens, he emphasized, it's necessary to dry his hand before continuing to do the Netilat Yadayim with the revi'it of water. So, mamash, in this case, he would have to dry his hands and basically start again. Okay? The Lametet, if someone needs to do Netilat Yadayim only in one hand, right? So for example, he already did it in one hand, right? But now one hand became defiled. He still must pour the water from the container with at least a revi'it. Meaning, don't say, listen, I need the revi'it for 2 hands. But if it's only going to be 1 hand, so therefore I only need half. No. Netilat Yadayim always needs a revi'it, right? And therefore, even though you already did Netilat Yadayim on one hand, right? And then I don't know what happened, that you still need a revi'it in that one cup. So remember that cup, the utensil, whatever that you're using, always needs to have a revi'it. The last halacha, what about if a person has small hands? So whether one has large hands or small hands, he has to use a container that has a revi'it. There's no difference if it's a small little child or if it doesn't matter, right? A revi'it, always need a revi'it. 107, the Mishnah Berurah interpreted this as an adult with small hands. The Beki'im Sofer argued, right, that if this is what halacha means, so you don't even have to write that, right? We already know that even if someone needs to pour the water in the one hand only, he still needs a revi'it. So therefore, it is self-understood that one needs an entire revi'it regardless of the area of what has to be poured. Meaning, we're not going to say, listen, let me see your hands. You need 3 cups, right? And the other guy, you need half a cup. The Kafakayim says that's not the explanation. He says, why? Because if not, then you don't need, if you, even for one hand, you always need a revi'it. So that's it. So he says the Kafakayim offered an alternative explanation. He says we're talking about a large person or a small person, an adult or a child. He says an adult or a child. He says that a father must train his child to perform doing the Netilat Yadayim properly. So therefore, even for a child, you would need this. Despite his argument, the interpretation of Mishnah Berurah also seems more plausible. So it doesn't seem a little bit more, understood in the halacha. But again, you've got the machloket as well.